Thank you all for being here. My name is Skip Rutherford. I'm Dean of the Clinton School, and welcome to Pathways to Public Service for Young Women. For several, and I guess most in this room, B.A. Rudolph was special, and she left us way too soon in 2011. Spirited, talented, advocate, champion, mentor, competitor, public service. Everybody laughs on that one. And that's true. I'll say it again, competitor, double competitor, role model, and most importantly, friend. Governor Clinton's staff, Deputy Chief of Staff to Transportation Secretary Rodney Slater, Chief of Staff to the Administrator of USAID, Brady Anderson, and godmother to Maggie Moore and Rebecca Cook Davis, who are two of the three co-founders of the B.A. Rudolph Foundation. Maggie's with USAID in Washington, and Becky's a genetic counselor and consultant in Santa Monica. And I am pleased to present both of them to talk about B.A. and the work of the foundation, which now bears her name. So please welcome Maggie Moore and Becky Davis.
Thank you so much, Skip, and we're just thrilled to be here today. It's my first time in Arkansas, but not my first time being surrounded by folks from this wonderful state and where BA's from. We're excited to be here. It means a lot to us. You know, my sister, the other co-founder, couldn't be here today. She is a high school chemistry teacher, and she does a lot of work with Teach for America, and they are hosting a very large event and asked her to speak there, and so her day job called, but she wishes she could be here too. Speaking of day jobs, I should mention that none of us are professional. We have no formal experience in nonprofit management. We did not go to the Clinton School of Public Service. I do public relations for the federal government. Bex is a genetic counselor, and my sister a high school teacher. But so we're not going to sit up here today and teach you how to run or start a nonprofit. We're still learning as we go. What we're going to talk to you about today is why we started the foundation, who BA was, and maybe a couple lessons we learned on the way. So we recently stumbled across this quote from LBJ, which says, "It is not enough just to open the gates of opportunity. All of our citizens must have the ability to walk through those gates." And that really seems to encapsulate what we try and do at the foundation. We understand inequality exists, and we understand that inequality creates barriers. And we're not trying to move mountains, we're just trying to lessen those barriers a little bit for a couple people who want to make a difference in the world. We understand that a small amount of support can help those people make that difference. And BA had that same principle running through every fiber of her being, and so this foundation tries to live up to that idea. Do you want to tell them a little bit more about BA?
Yeah, so to get to where we are today, we have to go back to the beginning. BA's from Fayetteville, Arkansas. Both of her parents were professors at the university. Her mother's taught Russian, and her father was in the English department. And she started her career in public service when she worked on Bill Clinton's first, eventually unsuccessful, congressional campaign. Not long after she graduated, she ended up in Washington, D.C., where she lived for the rest of her life. And she held a number of different positions in various realms of public service. But this really carried over not only from her professional life into her private life, into her family, into her friends. She was always helping young people, especially who had come to DC for the first time, basically help them get their foot in the door. She would give them a cheap place to live in her spare bedroom. She would host dinner parties and backyard barbecues, which some of you have been to. And it was all about networking. And she was a little bit bossy, as anyone who knew her would attest. But she did have really good advice. And she would always ask you the question, so what are you going to do next? So why are you doing this? And who have you met? What are you going to do about it? In fact, her favorite phrase and words of wisdom to us was put your big girl panties on and deal with it. And it was basically, don't whine. If you want to get somewhere, you want to do something, come up with a plan and get it done. And that takes a lot of work. So her goal was really to help young people along their own path. And she was quite an inspiration to us. And we met her. So Maggie and Meredith's mother and father are very dear friends of my parents, and so our moms were pregnant together. We have truly known each other our entire lives, and our moms and dads were very good friends with BA. So BA kind of started out as the other mom, the wacky aunt, and then that evolved over time to dear friend, mentor, advisor, all of these other really important roles in our lives. And so it really wasn't surprising when she found out that she had lung cancer, that she sat us down. She really called us into her office. We got emails, I think, that said, come by after work. And we all showed up, and she sat us down and said, this is what's going on with my health, and I have a plan. Which, not shocking, she always had a plan. And she said, you all are going to start a foundation. It's going to be called the B.A. Rudolph Foundation. It's going to be for young women, and you're going to do as much good as you possibly can for as long as you can. And not only that, but you're going to learn about philanthropy and nonprofit and running a business, managing a company, and working together not only as sisters, but as colleagues.
And Becky's first point was, how would you like us to do this? And she said, figure it out. It was a typical BA answer. She said, start with what you know, start with what you think I would support, start with women. So we started with what we knew, and we focused on women, and after lengthy discussions with both her and sidebars amongst the three of us, I should mention there are two future board members. At the time, one of them was 6, and the other was 13. So they helped pick out the colors of our logo, and were there when we made the announcement, but,
Bearing in mind also, we were 23 when this started, so that's pretty young to be handed a mission like this.
Still daunting.
Yeah.
But, 23-year-olds, what do they know? They know about internships. And so we started with a scholarship that would provide a stipend for interns who came to DC, who, in public service. And as we all know, public service can mean so many different things, whether it's interning at the DC public school system or working at a homeless shelter or working on the Hill. And we had help. We got it cleared through ethics. We can pay congressional interns. So we started with what we knew. And she passed away in the summer of 2011, and by that following summer, we made 3 awards. And one of them was for a young woman from Arkansas. And we were real excited about that. And we've learned a couple things along the way. We understood that support isn't just financial, and so we did mentorship. We met them, had them over for a barbecue in memory of BA's numerous barbecues. And we've sort of grown from there, but starting with what we knew, helping women.
So, like we mentioned, this was a bit of a daunting task, and it takes a village to do anything. And a few members of our village are here today. So we have not only the 3 of us, but we have Mike Robleski, who's one of our advisors to the board and our financial advisor, and Molly Buford, who is right in the back, lady in blue. And they have been absolutely vital to our success. They were already family friends, so we already knew them pretty well. And it was just a matter of shifting those relationships, like among ourselves, from being family to being colleagues. And they have been so incredibly helpful in helping us steer the ship, and good advice about really small, seemingly small logistical things, and getting our processes in order. And it's just been a tremendous help. And we really have to acknowledge that we appreciate all that they've done for us. And so we had a lot of challenges, but we also learned a lot along the way. You know, we had to figure out how to file the paperwork to apply for 501c3 status. We had to learn to figure out what our governance was going to look like. We had to write bylaws. We had to learn WordPress to create a website. I didn't know how to work WordPress, but I do now. We had to make sure we were helping with the investments in our portfolio and starting to tread down the daunting process of fundraising, which is very, very scary to us, but it's been a great learning experience as well. So we had a lot of these challenges, but we also never struggled with our purpose and our vision. That was always very, very clear to us. And sure, the details have varied along the way and will continue to vary, but that was very, very clear. And in moments of any fog, we could really hear BA's voice in the back of our head. So we knew what she had in mind for us and what directions we should go. So I think we, in all, are just extremely, while we face these challenges and will continue to do so, we've been really, really proud of the progress that we have made so far. From just this undergraduate public service scholarship, which was our first scholarship that we've had for 3 years now. We've given awards to 10 really incredible young women, and from those 10 scholarships, we've given $39,000 in awards to them. We're adding 2 new scholarships this year. So in summer of 2015, we'll have not only the undergraduate public service scholarship, but one for graduate students as well, the graduate public service scholarship, and a STEM scholarship for science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So in 2015, just between these 3, we're projected to give over $40,000 in scholarships this year alone, which we're extremely excited about. We held our first large event in Washington this past November. It was the Pathways to Public Service event, and we were honored to have Senator Kirsten Gillibrand as our keynote speaker. And she even hosted us at the Capitol building, which was pretty incredible. And then of course, obviously, we're here today with all of you. So it's really been an incredible journey, and we continue to overcome our challenges, but it's been a good ride, as B like to say.
And we've tried to make sure that, you know, our grand plans didn't, you know, become too grand. That everything was manageable growth was sort of a catchphrase from us from the beginning, thanks to a lot of advice in this room. You know, we all had day jobs, and we were 23, and we wanted to make sure what we did was scalable and slow and steady, that we didn't take on too much. You know, the youngest board member was 6, and you know, it's our goal that she gets to be an active board member, and I think we'll get there. Mm-hmm. I have no doubt that we'll get there, but making sure that we got the kinks out of the first scholarship. We waited 3 years until these other 2, and you know, we're learning, but we're quick learners, and we're passionate about this, and so it makes it easier to do. You know, you come home after working 8.5, 9 hours at your day job, and you sit on a board call for another 2. But
we get asked a lot what the future holds, of course, and we're about to hire our first staff member sometime soon. I had a change in cities recently, so I was able to work part-time for the foundation. So I am the first officially paid staff member of the foundation, which has been really exciting and quite an honor, but it's helped Maggie and Meredith be able to help steer the ship and not have to worry about the day-to-day tasks. And soon we'll be able to bring on a staff member to take over some of those responsibilities so that we can have a larger role in really steering the ship and designing new scholarships as we're able to implement them, and other projects that we're going to talk a little bit about. I lost my train of thought. It does.
I think for the most of us, the moment that gets us caught up, that chokes us up, is when someone comes up and says, you know, BA would be really proud of you. She would have liked this. This would have totally been her thing. You know, her 60th birthday was earlier this month, and so, you know, we created this foundation. It has her name. We think about her a lot, and I think I agree with them. I think she would be really proud of what we're doing, and her stamp of approval would involve a tiara and a margarita and a big hug and the same declaration that she always gave. You put on your big girl panties and you did it, and I think we did. So. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you all for coming again. Really appreciate it.
Okay, do we have any questions while we've got two talented young women who've done some pretty remarkable things in a very short amount of time? Anybody have any questions about BA and the BA Rudolph Foundation or anything at all? Yes, Aaron, back to the back. Wait for the microphone till our bartender Bob G now becomes our.
Thanks, Bob. Can you hear me? Thank you for coming. This group of most of the women at this table are Clinton School alums, and we're really excited that you're here. You mentioned at the beginning of your talk that you said public service can encompass so many different things. Can you tell us a little bit about, did you have a discussion about what public service meant to you all and what would mean to this foundation, and walk us through that a little bit?
So pretty early on, we had talked about it focusing on public service, and we did. We literally had that discussion about what that would mean. Initially, we were like, well, obviously, you know, of the thousands of interns that come to Washington every summer, most of them are congressional interns, but not exclusively that. And we, you know, we see our own professions as being in public service. My sister's a high school chemistry teacher, and there's no doubt in my mind that that is a public service. And I work in international development, which is no less public service, it's just different. And, you know, healthcare, you mentioned earlier today, if there's
Healthcare, whether you're, I think, a clinician and helping a community, or you're someone in a lab that's doing basic science research, you never know what study is going to lead to a big breakthrough or lead to the lead that's going to lead through the breakthrough. So we definitely have a very broad definition. I think it's the idea of serving your community and serving others and putting others before yourself. And I think we did all end up in careers before this that in our own way and in our own interest did serve that purpose in our vision, and this really made sense. And when BA told us about this, and I was reflecting on this earlier, where I think we've all taken on this mission with much more of a passion than I would have expected if you told me about this 5 or 10 years ago. But I think BA knew that would happen. I think she secretly said, I'm not going to tell them this is the reaction that they're going to have, but this is going to be really, really good. So I think it is a broad definition. Our process of walking through it was, well, let's start with the obvious, some congressional interns and interns similar to that. And then let's start slowly walking that out. So we've had scholars that did internships in congressional offices, like you mentioned, homeless shelters, women's shelters, the U.S. Task Force on Palestine. That's a public
United to End
service.
Genocide, all kinds of different things. And when they apply for our application, we ask them to define it. We ask them, how is this a public service, and why are you passionate about it? Because if you can justify it, we'll get on board. Again, our spectrum, pretty broad.
But it also did lead us to start the STEM scholarship, because we recognized at some point undergraduate public service, we do need to define that a little more. So we are hoping, as we can broaden our programs, that we can make some more specific definitions so that we can, if for no other reason, to allow more scholars on board, do the most good we can in the time we have. I hope that helps to answer your question. Okay.
Any other questions? Yeah, Ashley.
I'd be interested in your thoughts or any observations from mentoring or working with the scholars that you have funded. What kind of challenges do you see them facing as young women going into public service, and how have you seen them evolve, maybe from the people who got your scholarships first and now a few years later, are they still in public service? How do they overcome those challenges?
I think, so we mentor on a couple different levels. We actually assign 2 mentors outside of the board first. So one who's maybe earlier in their career, closer to their age, someone in maybe their 20s or early 30s. Is that me?
We got it.
Who has more recently been searching for a job and maybe did an internship and can give really good practical advice about being early in their career. And then we also assign a mentor who has been in their field for a longer period of time and can give the good sage wisdom and help networking and introducing them to other people. And then we, of course, stay in close touch with them. So from our conversations and from some interviews we've done with them since they graduated, some of the themes that we hear are, I'd never lived that far from home or from my college community, and being in a new city was a little scary at first, but you create a community for yourself, and you create people that you can reach out to support you professionally as well as personally. We had one of our scholars from this past year, Pia, had a wonderful quote in this interview that we videotaped where she was very concerned about coming to Washington as a young woman with very strong, very liberal views, and that she was very politically active and very opinionated, and she was concerned that she would really have to tone that down, and that she couldn't advocate for what she believed in because she felt she had these very strong opinions. And she came and said, I found a community and I found out that I can be myself and I can have my opinions and I can fight for what I believe in. It doesn't mean I have to be mean and hurtful, but it means I can really be an advocate for what I believe, and I can be myself here and I can work for what I believe in. And it was she said she felt very empowered, and that really stuck with me and was important. So I think watching them become themselves through just a really short summer internship has been really powerful.
And we keep in touch with them. One of them got a job offer from the internship that we helped make possible, which was amazing. But a couple have gone back to grad school to continue their studies. And one young woman who has always been interested in Israeli-Palestinian conflict moved to Jordan to better learn about that particular area of the world. And her internship at the Israeli-Palestinian conflict nonprofit certainly helped her get the application that made that possible. And so, are they all in careers in public service? Depends on how you define it, but I think that the lessons that they learned, whether they're career, professional related, or personal from their experience in Washington, are valuable no matter what.
So we have 3 graduating classes, so many are still in school and are traveling, like Maggie said. So we will be keeping tabs on them and keeping track of where they are today, and hopefully there's some future board members in that group.
Yes, Rebecca.
I have a question. You guys were talking about managed and scalable growth. And I was hoping you could talk a little bit about that. Did it kind of start with, this is what we ultimately want the foundation to look like, and so we need to walk it back, and this is what we need to do to get there? Or is it kind of like, this is what we're capable of doing now, so this is what we're going to do?
So from the get-go, when BA told us about her wishes, she said, make sure that it's about your interests too. And so we always knew that we were going to do something focused in STEM. Both my sister and Bex majored in the sciences, and BA herself worked in healthcare advocacy. But at the same time, we didn't want to take on too much. So we had sort of a 3-year plan, and it just so happened that we stuck to our timeline. We have, weekly conference calls between the 3 of us. We have quarterly meetings with our advisors. We have and at those quarterly meetings, we set goals, and they're short-term and long-term. They're the 6-month goals, and they're the, let's put this on the parking lot for now. but we do want to make sure that anything we do stays true to BA and what her personality and interests would align with, but that it would be true to us as well.
I think we do both. I think we've definitely had that conversation where, what do you think this looks like in 10 years? And we get really excited and get some very grand pie in the sky ideas. And so we've often started with that and said, okay, well, what's possible now? What do we need to learn in between now and then? And a big part of that, of course, is our finances. Is this economically feasible for us? Can we sustain this long enough at a volume with a dollar volume, enough to do that? I mean, so, sure, would I love someday to be able to fund a full academic scholarship for an undergrad or two? That would be amazing. I think everyone should have the opportunity to go to college, and that's extraordinarily important to all of us. That would be great. So, we're taking steps looking at our options outside of just career building internship on the job learning experiences, but looking into more academic scholarship options. So we have started to explore that path. And it's what do we need from A to B, because it's really A to Z. And so we definitely walk it back that way and go both directions. But we absolutely have, at our last marathon board meeting, we had everyone bring in proposals for partnerships that they thought were interesting that we should explore. And everybody brought 2 or 3, and it took us about 6 hours, but we got through them all and other things. Lots of coffee and pizza, but everyone kind of defended their idea, and we said, all right, like you said, what's feasible now? What can we do in the future? What is a sponsorship of a conference that's easy and hands-off, and what's something that we can take on now and we can be really involved in? And so we absolutely go through it in both directions, and I think the vital part of it has been that in these early stages that we all knew BA and that we all knew what she would approve of or not approve of. Nobody would bring anything to the table that she wouldn't approve of, but and that we're all very open with each other. We have a very, I think, strong relationships that we can be very honest and sometimes very blunt, and we can say, that's a good idea, but there's no way we can do that right now, that we can't even start down that path yet, or tweaking other ideas that are more feasible. So I think an open communication with the team is really vital for any working situation or any group project or whatever it is that you have, and that's a huge portion of that walking forward and walking back for us.
Anna, this is the question table over there, I gotta say.
We're having a Clinton School Girls Book Club after this tonight, so I'm sure the discussion, yes, absolutely, the discussion will continue. I really like the idea of you all connecting the young women you work with to mentors, both young and more advanced in their careers. And I wondered if you could talk a little bit about the mentors you all choose for yourselves. I mean, obviously BA's been a mentor for you, but if you could talk a little bit about how you do that. Is it more happenstance, or do you really go out and select that? I often talk about this group of girls sometimes as part of my personal board of directors, and I think it's really important that as young women we do work, I guess youngish, that we work to surround ourselves with people that we admire and want to emulate in our careers. So if y'all could talk a bit about that as well. Thanks.
I think we all wish that Madeleine Albright was our official personal mentor. The Leslie Knope in us, I would really like that. For me personally, I think mentors have come at different stages of life, where in undergrad, my first mentor was a professor that I did research with in the lab. And she was wonderful in helping me pick my classes and focus where I wanted to go with my career, and deciding that I didn't want to be in a lab, as it turned out, that I was more of a people person and wanted to see people and not mice and all of that. And so she was really vital at that stage in my career. And then I ended up going into a medical field and working in hospital. And so that just kind of shifted. And I think my current mentor is somebody who just has a similar consultant role that I do. And consultants they happen a lot in Washington. I kind of chuckled to myself when I took my first consultant job, saying, oh, BA would approve of this. Of course I'm a consultant. Everybody in Washington has to be a consultant at one point or another in their career. And but it is kind of a unique position for someone in healthcare and in the sciences. So I had a supervisor at an internship, actually, which is how I got my job. And she was the only PhD consultant that I knew that worked in genetics. And so that was sort of a natural relationship. And when I left my clinical job, I gave her a call, and she was there, and she set me up with a really wonderful job. The timing was great. And but I think, sorry, I diverged a little bit, but I think the selection involves for me people that I admire and people who have a lot of experience, but I really connect with on a personal and professional level, and that I know it, again, back to sort of open communication, I know it is going to be willing to say to me that you need to refocus this way or that way, or you really need to ask yourselves these really tough questions, and are you prepared to answer these questions? So I think it's someone that challenges you, but also helps encourage you and support you through any process, and that's what it's been like for me.
So I had my first political internship. I grew up in DC when I was 17, and my Aunt Kiki, who is a political wonk herself, became my de facto mentor. She didn't so much become my mentor as conscript me. She, I love her, and she has wonderful opinions, and I love her advice, and it's valuable, but it was more of a top-down mentorship, and still is. And I know no matter what, she'll have my back, and she'll have advice, whether I want it or not. This is not dissimilar from BA's role as a mentor in my life. I also have a bunch of friends from college and my professional career who we get together and we talk, and that sort of the peer mentor is so helpful, having that support network where it's not complaining, it's not whining. BA would hate whining, but it's talking through. And one friend in particular, we met in college. We did theater together, of all things, and bonded over our love of the West Wing, and worked on our first campaigns at the same time. She was in Pennsylvania, I was in Louisiana, totally different experiences, but had the same sort of, we both moved to DC, and so in that sense, there's a lot of, this person is at the same stage in their life and will have, if not identical experiences, very similar ones, and know what I'm going through, and that's super helpful. But I'm still looking for mentors. I'm always constantly asking for advice. The rest of the board has become a big network. They don't do anything in politics or international development, but they have known me literally since birth. Bex is 24 days older than me, and my sister is 6 minutes younger than me. So they are lifelong. I don't have to explain the backstory; they already know it, and that's helpful as well. But I just started a new job in July, and my supervisors has been a wealth of information, and getting up the courage to ask him out to lunch so that he could give me advice is a big, brave step that I teach at the foundation or advocate for at the foundation, and try and girdle myself up and do what I say. And that's been really important too.
That's actually exactly what I was going to say. I think one thing we talk to our scholars a lot about is networking takes guts. You have to be able to go to a networking event or a fundraiser if you're in Washington and be willing to be there with no one there that you know, and just walk up to someone and introduce yourself, or politely get into a conversation and look for those mentors and look for those connections. And it's really scary, but it really does get easier the more you do it. Somewhat. So I think there's a lot of bravery that goes into networking, and that's usually the context that we're discussing it in, but also with mentors. And we give our scholars, their assigned mentors, names, emails, and phone numbers with a little bit of background information, and we don't set them up. We say, you need to call them, and you need to introduce yourself, and set up a time to have coffee or to have dinner or a phone conversation, whatever that may be. But this is a skill you need to learn, and maybe you have learned it already, maybe you haven't, but, and we've had a couple people who haven't been as prompt as we would like in doing this, but that's part of the learning experience too. So I think there's a lot of courage that we want to instill in, especially in young women who, sort of the stereotype is that young women are less inclined to take those kinds of leaps and ask for things for themselves. And I'm not completely sure that that's true, but we just want to make sure that it's not true and bolster that kind of courage.
Got time for one more question. Anybody got? Bob Nash. I'm glad to represent the other gender in this question.
And the other tables.
Yeah, the other table, which may be even more important than the gender.
You're welcome to use this one if you'd like.
BA was a friend of mine for nearly 40 years. She would be very proud of you today and carrying on the things she cared about, I can tell you. I was in some of those backyard sessions with her where we were solving the world problems. And I'm actually a recovered male chauvinist because of BA. She'd say, Bob, if a man's creative, what do they call a woman? I said, I don't know. She said, crazy. If a man is aggressive, what do they call a woman? Pushy. And she could give me all those things. She said, now you listen to that. And that's where I'm a recovered male chauvinist. And I taught my daughter a lot of those same things. She doesn't take a back seat to anybody. BA didn't, and I know you all won't either. Last thing I'll say is this. She, in the backyard, there would be congressmen, congresswomen, ambassadors, CIA agents. In fact, when I went to Washington to work in Hillary's campaign, presidential campaign, I said, B, I need a place to crash for about a couple of weeks. Can I stay with you? She said, no, my rooms are all full, but I know somebody you can stay with. And I said, you said a CIA agent. And she let me stay. I stayed with a CIA agent for a month who was a friend of hers. True story. That's BA.
I have to say, I'm not surprised that her bedrooms were filled. They were typically filled, so I'm not surprised that you were turned out. I'm sorry, but they were always filled.
Well, we want to thank you. We want to thank you for carrying on a great legacy and for doing something at 23, which is pretty remarkable, putting this together. I mean, that's remarkable. And, we've heard it that BA would be proud. Now, she would probably, have offered you some constructive criticism up here. Me too, by the way. But that you all and all her friends and her network have continued her work is a very good thing. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you. Thank you. So actually, before we adjourn, we do have an announcement we'd like to make.
So in the spirit of measured growth, one of the proposals that we talked about a couple months ago was the fact that we wanted to bring her foundation home to Arkansas. And one of the proposals that we heard from multiple people who showed up at this board meeting was to create a endowment at the Clinton School of Public Service. And so today we're announcing that we have begun that. We have made an initial investment of $50,000. It'll be called the Rudolph Family Scholarship, not only after BA, but of her parents who taught at the University of Arkansas as well. And it will go to a second-year graduate student for full tuition and additional expenses. And we'll make our first announcement later this spring.
Well, needless to say, on behalf of our faculty and staff and students, this is a very generous and significant gift for us. There are a lot of students in this room that will be second-year students next year and know that student loan debt and other expenses are very, very burdensome and detrimental. So you're going to help a young woman immediately, and BA would like the immediacy of your help. So thank you very much, and on behalf of the Clinton School, thank you for the Rudolph Family Scholarship.